Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I have a guest today. Her name is Purnima. Thank you, Purnima, for joining us. We'll be discussing a very important topic for everyone. I've said in a couple of my videos that Americans are so good at selling themselves, and I think this is, Americans are born with that. They're taught that in kindergarten, at school. You're taught how to sell yourself. Like in Russia, that never happens, and I think in other countries, people are also, I was taught to be modest, not to brag about yourself, and I don't really like showing off my accomplishments. But if you want to be in American culture, if you want to succeed everywhere in the world, you have to be this American style selling yourself. And I wanted to get your tips on that, because you need to sell yourself when you're getting into university, when you're starting your own company, moving to a foreign country, like all the time selling.
Yeah.
So maybe you could give us some tips how to do that.
Well, actually, I would not say that you're taught this in kindergarten or that you're even taught it at all. So, I came to the States when I was 2, so English wasn't quite my first language, but it was basically my first language. And I was not taught how to sell myself, and I was a very shy kid growing up. And around middle school, I discovered that if I wanted to get to the next level in my life, or if I didn't want to have such a hard life, but I needed to get comfortable speaking in public. And so I decided that I would sign up to participate in my middle school's speech and debate program. And through that's where I really learned.
This is where it all comes from.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that I did, because then I was able to ace my college interview, ace my first job interview, and then do more complicated things like raise capital from investors, be a founder, and all these things. But it took a lot of years of getting comfortable with practicing and really learning how to speak for yourselves authentically. So I've seen this across a lot of cultures, and like you mentioned, we're taught to be modest. And even in America, people are taught to be humble and modest. And I think the challenge then becomes, how do you talk about yourself in a way where it doesn't seem like you're selling yourself, but you are putting yourself out there. You do want people to know about the work that you do and what you have to offer. And for myself, I found that the most authentic way to do that is really to teach. And it can be, it can be, and you do this all the time, right? You do this on your YouTube channel. So teaching people from your experience. And that can be a positive experience, it can be a negative experience. A lot of times, even those negative experiences, those war stories or those failures that you had, can be very refreshing, because people on the receiving end feel like, oh, I'm not the only one. And if she could do it, then maybe I could too, and kind of presenting all the stumbling blocks that you went through. So really taking the time to figure out, what do you want to teach, what's your experience, how you can break it down, and how that would be valuable to somebody else. So, for example, let's say you're getting ready to do your first job interview. I'm sure a lot of your viewers out there are thinking about that. Instead of coming in and being like, oh yeah, this is my skill and I can do this, this, and this, you may ask a few questions. You might say like, well, what are some of the projects coming up? What have you guys struggled with? How are you stuck? And then you can think through your own experience of like, okay, how might I have done this in the past, or how did I do it? And can I showcase that here and say, hey, if I were to come here, if you were to hire me, here's how I would think about doing it, right? So you're kind of teaching them along. And when you do that, that feels a lot more authentic, rather than like, hire me, and sign me up, or like, I want to get started. So you got to be very careful, because you're right. There is a bit of a negative stereotype that sometimes Americans can be too salesy, too pushy. You see it on like the infomercials, like buy this now for $19.99. You don't want to be that. You want to be professional. You want to be authentic. You want people to be able to connect with you. So I found that teaching is often a great way to get started. Now, if you feel like you don't know what you would talk about, or you don't know your background, I have a book that my co-author Karen Catlin and I came up with, and we call this the inventory method. And the way that it works is, you're basically going to take stock of things that you've worked on for the last 3 to 12 months. The reason we say 3 to 12 is it's usually what's freshest in your mind. And things move pretty fast in the world these days, so it's usually what's also most relevant out there. And especially if you're from an industry like tech, where I'm from, things move really quickly. So 12 months is a safe bet. And as you're taking stock of projects, problems even, or some process you put in place, you'll start to see themes emerge. And from those themes, you can create a talk, you can create something to share.
Yeah.
So to give you an example, back in 2008, when I was getting back into public speaking, I decided to sign up and speak at a local code camp here in the Valley. And I had been a founding engineer at Mint.com. So as I was taking stock, I realized what I had done was build, launch, and scale a software product to serving millions of people. So I ended up sharing that with the audience, and they found it really valuable because they hadn't done it. They got a chance to learn from me. They got a chance to see how I put it together, and then they went off later and tried the product out. They come up and ask me questions. Some wanted to work for me. Some wanted to learn. Cool. So it was a great way to develop a rapport with them. And I even had this nice side effect years later. In fact, earlier this year, there was a young woman who was in my audience again. She came up to me and she said, "That talk you gave in 2008, I was there."
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and she said that she saw the talk. I was a few years out of college, and she thought if I could start a company and get up there and speak, that she could too, and she did. So you have a really positive impact when you share your experience, when you share your voice, when you share your ideas with the world.
Yeah, and I also think if you don't share, then what is the way for them to find out? Because this is the only way, if you write it down or you talk about it. So make sure you understand that, because there are stories that have happened to you, and the only way for other people to know that is when you tell them those stories. Cool. And maybe you could talk about resumes as well. How do you structure that to show everything, these resumes you needed to apply for a job and to get into university?
Yeah. So I'm not sure about other countries, but in the US especially, people really value your LinkedIn profile.
Make sure.
Yeah.
Just in Russia.
Yeah. Oh, okay. But it's not like you have to have two things. You really want to have kind of a similar structure.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to tell you applies to your resume or your LinkedIn profile, but you really want it to tell a story. So you don't want to just say interned at Google, and then that was it, right? You want to talk about why you were an intern there, what was a project you worked on, and the impact your project had.
Yeah, why were you different from other employees, because there are thousands.
Exactly. And a lot of times people have this habit of saying we did this, we did that, and that's fine if you were on a team, but you should be able to pinpoint one or two things that you did in that project, or the contribution that you made, and what was the impact of it. So really take the time to kind of introspect and think about that, because it's good to have it on your resume, but people will ask it as a question during the interview and want you to elaborate a little bit more. So don't always rely on we the team. Think about what did I do, what was my contribution, how did it help, and even if there were some individual projects, add those as well. And then the last thing I will say is make sure that whatever the job is that you're applying for, you have some of that relevant experience in the resume. So if, for example, you're applying for a leadership role, even if your leadership was working at a restaurant or at a camp or something, make sure to include that, because it's still valuable for people to see.
And another input from me, if you worked as a salesperson, there's no need to describe that you had to sell things to other people. Save space, save other people's time, and point out your accomplishments, like you performed 4x better than an average employee or something. And keep your resume small, one pager on average.
Exactly.
And you have this course, right, that teaches people how to sell themselves, right?
Yeah, so it's called the Confident Communicator course. I teach it once a year. It's online, so we have students from all over the world who participate, and we walk you through some interpersonal skills first. So how do you communicate effectively one-on-one, in a meeting, and we get you feeling comfortable being on stage, because we know a lot of people are nervous about that. So we teach this course once a year. I'm going to be teaching it February 2017 for 8 weeks. And then in addition to the 8-week course, we have 2 additional weeks where we'll dive into skills like accent reduction, negotiation skills, and interview skills.
You guys should definitely take this course, because Purnima was the toughest mentor at Accelerator, and she gave us so many valuable things that I used. And She helped me train for the demo day, and I will also leave a link below because there is a video of me presenting. And if you saw me at the beginning when I just started, my presentation was awful. Like my final presentation was amazing.
Awesome.
Thank you
Yep.
so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and she taught us how to talk to investors. And at the beginning, I think you were not really happy with us.
Okay.
After our first meetings, Dima was like, he was all
Tough
rebellious.
love.
Yeah. And I was like, what's going on? And I talked to some other people and I told that you were a POC, and they were like, oh, she's the toughest manager at that accelerator. That was so fun. But yeah, she really taught us a lot of great things, and this is a great opportunity for you guys to learn something from Purnima.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. I will leave all the links below. I have a couple more videos for Purnima, and I will leave a link to her course. And thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you, Purnima, for joining. And don't forget to like, subscribe. And if you have any questions, leave them in comments. We'll definitely get back to you and answer the questions. Cool. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.